Okay, hi there everybody and welcome to Basketball Ireland celebration of Women in Sport Week. My name is Erin Bracken and I'm delighted to be joined by a fantastic panel today. We have Catriona Waite, Jodie Waite and Grainne Dwyer as we discuss their careers and how they've gotten involved and stayed involved in sport as part of our Active Participation Week. So guys, welcome and thanks very much for joining us. You all have a wealth of experience, so I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I suppose just to kind of kick us off, it's for all of you and you can all just chip in whenever you want, but what's your key message to encourage young girls and women in particular to stay involved in sport and the benefits of doing so? So quite general, but just to kind of get the conversation going and get your thoughts on it.
I'll kick off there. Yeah, I suppose like if you think about it, it's an easy way to stay fit and stay healthy by participating in sports. It's also good for your mental health, and it's a way for a lot of younger people to meet friends outside of their families or groups.
Yeah, definitely.
I know I would second that from Grainne. I'm a little bit older than Grainne, but the friends that
only a
I
little bit
are friends for life. But it teaches us so much more than just the health and fitness and the mentality. It teaches you discipline. It teaches you teamwork. It teaches you good communication, work ethic, and all those other things, life skills that you don't get taught in mainstream school.
Yeah, I agree with both because obviously I'm still in secondary school and I just found playing basketball, it's great with the whole teamwork and it benefits you like in group projects academically as well. So it just has the overall balance of mental health and everything.
Yeah, and I think for me, confidence-wise as well, outside of school, I was never like unbelievable in the classroom, and I think sport gave me confidence to like and a lot of social skills as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest kind of statistics, I suppose, is that there is a big drop-off rate, for girls in sport, particularly at that secondary school level. What do you think are some of the bigger kind of challenges and barriers for young girls and women to get involved and then to kind of stay involved?
For me, it was different. We didn't have the social media pressure. To meet our friends, we had to meet our friends. They didn't have like online chats or Snapchat or all that stuff. So it encouraged us to get out and meet people in person. People these days can have thousands of friends and never meet anyone really. So that's one thing. And other than that, I think it's just a case of with COVID especially, the drop off could be detrimental to some young people with their development, and that they might have found something else just to share their time. Me even coming back, I found that I got a little bit lazy, but I found other interests, I suppose, to take up my time, be it cycling and running and stuff. And I was kind of wondering whether I would come back to the level I was at and the commitment I had to it. But I decided I did, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah, I suppose though, with you even saying that you picked up other, hobbies and activities even in the meantime, and we'd encourage girls, even if it's not basketball, or they might drop out of basketball, that they do stay involved in sport in some way, so but you do see a lot of girls drop off, there's different statistics and surveys that they just drop off and out of sport altogether. So I suppose it's great that you were able to kind of stay involved. Grainne, have you got any thoughts on it? I know you've been involved for a long time and you might have come across lots of young girls that may have quit and given up. Have you got anything in terms of trying to help people stay involved?
Yeah, I suppose like the dropout. See, what I find especially with basketball is there's so many leagues underage. So when we get to under 20s, I know in the Cork League, they have the Cork League, but there's no kind of national league for them to play in under 20s. And it's a big step then from, I know they play in the cup, but there's a big step then from under 20s to senior level. And I think sometimes with the drop off, just in basketball in general, it's finding a level for people to stay active at and to stay playing at, at local level. Even like when you play like the Cork League, you're going up, maybe you have a 17-year-old playing against women, and it doesn't always suit them. But so I think in that there is a fierce drop off rate at that, but like you said, even if it's encouraged them to go play another sport and just to stay active. Yeah, absolutely.
I think one of the biggest things that we've noticed this year in particular, I've started to work closely with Louise, who's our women in sport lead, is that there's a really big appetite for social basketball. So I feel like the competitive side of things, like for teenagers, sometimes they don't want to play in all of these leagues. And like I coach under 16 girls team, and this girl came to us a couple of weeks ago, looked to join us, but she'd never played basketball before, like at all, not even in school. And it's like, we had nothing to offer her at that point. Like we have 6 of our under 16 girls on the Irish panel, so it's like, coming at to try and play at that level. Whereas if there was a social basketball kind of set, and so I think that's one of the main focuses to try and increase participation, is to run some more social basketball sessions and stuff that's non-competitive and that's recreational, so like you said, to actually meet new people and to make friends and to just be involved in a non-competitive setting. Okay, so I'm going to kind of target each of you now individually. And Catriona, I'm going to start with you to talk a little bit about your experiences of playing National League level, like internationally, and then of course refereeing. So I just want you to give us a little bit of background on yourself and just talk a little bit about your career, and then we can see where we go from there.
Great. Okay. I don't know, they're bear with me. I get the dates right. So I guess I was thinking about this a little bit. So I would have joined in first year in school in the Mercy in Waterford back in about 19, I'm likely to think 1988, 89. So basically all I fed into it was with an assembly, like it was the next basketball trial starting, and I just kind of went along. Jerry Fitzpatrick would have been my first coach with Evelyn Hearn, and from there it was just opened a new world. I had done little things before that, like a bit of judo, a bit of running, but nothing, I was a street kind of kid, bit of football on the road, but nothing team orientated. So it was brand new to me. My brother was into GAA, but my other 2 sisters had no background in sport. I just got the bug really. Again, I went because my friends went. Jerry was very big into sports psychology, and even at a very young age like that, he had us thinking that we were invincible. He had us, he was streets ahead at that time. So we were very lucky. We had the likes of the Gillian Hayes, the Christine Kylie's, they were all making Irish teams, like your under 16 team now. So I was around players that demanded me to get better. Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't that I was good, because I was a late bloomer, and I often tell my own daughter, I didn't make my first Irish team to under 19 level. I was dropped under 15 and under 17, and like the devastation that comes with that. But the resilience then that I learned through just the disappointment was good enough for me to keep going. And it was infectious, because I was around people that were all Irish team, players. And eventually I got my break. So like the Mercy of this year, I think we were probably the last team that won that double 19A. So that was in 1991, I would think. So that's the gap. And that's what I'm trying to explain again to the Liffey girls in the final. It's so difficult to get to a final.
Yeah.
That you have to grasp it and leave everything on the floor and have no regrets. So we went on from there. Mercy had a great setup with Wildcats in conjunction. Wildcats again with Jerry. We started off and we were always the bridesmaid, never the bride kind of thing. We'd lost 4 or 5 cups, I think, before we managed to break through then in the early 2000s. And from there, I think there was about, at that era, 4 or 5 of us on the Irish senior women's team. So you can only imagine what club training was like with that kind of competitiveness. Yeah. And in the 2000s, then we were quite successful. I'm thinking, like, Ron, you could correct me, but we were around 6 or 7 league titles. And I won 3 cup medals with Waterford, Wildcats. And then I came up here to work in Dublin, and I won one with Leicester as well.
Very good. And when you're talking about how competitive, like training sessions and stuff, how was that for some of the girls that, weren't as competitive, say, as you, or the girls that were on the Irish team? Like when you do have the other girls that are there just for the crack and, just to be part of a team, was there any ever kind of, I suppose, kind of blowback there, or, how even did your coach manage to balance all of that?
I guess he kind of knew the place for them. He had a role for them. And to be honest, back then, and it's different now with the girls that are versatile players. And, I was like a 2-3, maybe 2-3-4, maybe because of my size, probably not even a bit generous with my ball hanging there. So I'm 2-3, but like our point guards were just ones.
Yeah.
We had just 2s. Gillian Hayes was just a 4-5. So we didn't have that. So he found somewhere where you might, and he literally, honestly, my point guard was only able to dribble from the 3-point And if she got carried away and did something outside her role, she would be subbed off.
Yeah.
So it was very, very disciplined. And it's probably not a type of game that a lot of young people would be for these days, because it's so much more fluid now, and you have multi-positional players, and they're more athletic now.
Yeah,
So
very
I
good.
think then I had a few kids, and I went then and got introduced to Liffey Celtics. And when I turned up the first day, and I called out Alice O'Connor, she asked me outside the gym, did I ever play basketball before? Because it was pre-season. And I said to Alba, you can ask me that.
Just a little.
So that's Alba coming from like a Galway background, never heard of Cats or Catriona White. So she learned pretty quick that I could play a bit.
Yeah.
And that was the year that Liffey went from Division 1 National League, and they won the National League. And
Got promoted to Super League. Yeah, I remember I think I was 14 and I was in the crowd, and I remember you announcing your pregnancy on
I
the
was 3
national
months
basketball.
pregnant when we won our league final.
Yeah,
and,
I remember that. Yeah.
A couple of
But
the
you
girls on the
also
team
won that
knew,
cup
so they were trying
final
to mind
with
me on the
Leicester.
floor. Huh?
You also won that cup final with Leicester, like how many months after having your first baby?
Ellie was 9 months, but my dad had only died 2 weeks previous.
Yeah.
So I had missed the whole build up to the cup, and it was Maeve Coleman actually rang me on the Monday and was like, we're playing the cup final at the weekend, are you coming back? And I went, oh right. And I didn't even think about basketball clearly at the time, but I came back and I didn't start because I hadn't been missing. But I came on and I ended up getting the MVP.
MVP of the game, you shot the lights out. Yeah, I remember.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. I suppose then another thing, Catriona, before we move on to the other two women, just in terms of your refereeing. So I know that you're after being awarded your next refereeing badge, so congratulations, moving up in the world. But also just to kind of show and like to illustrate that there's other ways to kind of stay involved in the game. And I know you're still playing, and you're heavily involved, like you're there to support like Ellie playing and everything. But what actually made you take up the whistle? And I know you probably could say that there's a lack of good referees in the country, and you wanted to try and go and be one, but just to show like to everybody else how important it is.
It's a good question. And to be honest, it was a case of like I was getting a little bit frustrated with the standard of the referees that were there through no fault of their own, through retirements and people moving away and abroad and stuff. I was on maternity leave when I took up the course first. I'm not sure how well received I was when I walked in to do the intro course, because it was kind of said poacher come gamekeeper, because I suppose I play like Grainne, where you test the knowledge of the referees with your physicality, with your own knowledge of the game. And I kind of took it up just as a hobby on maternity leave. But again, I have an ultra competitive side of myself. So then when I started to referee games, I wanted to kind of get better. I wanted to be the best version of myself in that once I focused on the refereeing. And I felt like I was doing a good job. I feel like my communication skills on the court are pretty good. I'm a pretty reasonable person. I can acknowledge when I make mistakes. We might always agree, the coaches or players, but I try to have an understanding of what you guys are trying to do as a player or a coach, and I try and instill that in the field for the game.
Yeah.
So I got my grade 3, and then obviously went on to the National League panel. Got my grade 2 then, which just is the next step up. And luckily this year I got my grade 1, and because of my age, and we won't go into ageism, I only took up refereeing at 38. So I wouldn't be able to go for a FIBA because you have to be under 35. Okay. But like I would pass a fitness test and a rules test for FIBA, I would imagine. But look, it's the best version of I can be. So I'm after reaching that milestone. And for me now, it's to encourage young people, especially women, to take it up and get actively involved, and to mentor them. And it's a nice kind of thing when Ellie gets kind of messages from her peers down the country, be it Cork or wherever, and they say, oh, there's your mom, she's the GOAT, because you're acknowledged as a fair and competent referee. So that's kind of nice that they can see a woman in sport that is kind of a referee, the Men's Super League Cup final, and like this is like hedging toward 35 years still involved in basketball.
Yeah, I suppose that kind of brings us nicely into that whole like visibility and, you know, like role models and how important they are. So like even yourself, Grainne, like, you know, like you'd be that one of those like female faces like in the country in terms of playing at such a high level. And like, how important is it for it to have visible role models within the game?
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose when I grew up, I come from a hurling county, I come from Tip, so it was always like the males that you've seen. And I suppose I was fortunate enough that Niamh played, and she's only 2 years older than me, but I had a role model in her when she started playing and making Irish teams. It's not that I ever said I wanted to go out there and do it, but I just enjoyed playing with her, and like when she made the Midlands and so on and so forth. So I actually had someone in my house that I could look up to, and that was a role model to me, that that eventually, like, you know, I took it up when I went into first year also in the prize, and ever since then I just like have got the bug as well, and I'm still playing. Like, I mean, I've had a few obviously clubs throughout. I played with Wildcats as well for four seasons when I started out my Super League career. Had a great time at Wildcats, really good club, always look after you, and then just ended up going down to Cork and travelled up and down for a year or two, and then actually got transferred in the bank down to Glenmire, and I was with Glenmire for 10-12 years. And then, you know, we like Wildcats, we were very successful as well, in the sense we always reached finals, but like that we never could just get over the line. And then I went to Glenmire, and we just kind of, I played with such experienced players there. Like Niamh had come back, Michelle Fahy was there, Denise Walsh was there, so much experience, and we just kind of, it all kind of steamrolled from there. Now I'm with Father Mathews, which is it's a new challenge for me as well. Like, we have a lot of youth there, a lot of inexperience, so it has been very challenging, but like, you know, it also has been very rewarding to see them come from National League to Super League. Be even more rewarding, I suppose, if we got a few more wins this season, but like hopefully we'll finish on a high next weekend. But yeah, so then look, I just got the bug. I love playing. I love being able to give back to the club as well. I think that's essential as well. I feel like, you know, if you want someone to be a female role model or a role model in your club, that person has to be able to give back to the club. Unfortunately, I don't coach in my club because I just feel like I don't have the time to put into training myself 2 nights a week and a game, but I also help out. We do academy, or if anyone wanted us to fill in, just to be there and give any bit of experience, I'll always show up, you know.
Yeah, and I suppose you mentioned Niamh as one of your role models, like earlier on, as your older sister, and what has it been like, I suppose, to play for her when you have the two of you kind of at the helm of Father Mathews?
I think we were, if you ask anyone who's played with us, it's probably worse to play with the two of us, because Niamh is, she'll kill me for saying this, but she's a real teacher, like, and her profession is a teacher, so she's quite calm, whereas she was crazy as a player, hence same way as I am, but she's very calm as a coach. She's very structured, like game plans. She has all the work done. So literally, now I'd say it's harder for her to coach me than for me to be coached by her. But I just think it's great that there is more females coaching in the Super League. You know, I know Gillian is assistant coach now in Wildcats, but like yourself, you're going to Dublin Lions, like, and that's what you need. You need more experienced women being involved, especially with women's teams.
Yeah, and what do you think some of the barriers are, you know, as to why there isn't more females, you know, kind of coaching or refereeing, or, you know, like, I suppose it's coaching and refereeing really, like, you know, like we talked about Cats, and you have Emma Perrin, you know, you have some very strong female referees there, and there's the couple of us women that are coaching at a high level. But, you know, what do you think in terms of barriers to kind of career progression?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is to do with confidence, and then being confident enough to go in and coach the whole team and stand in front of them, and, like, you know, that's your team, you're the leader. I also think it is a bit of a man's world as well, at times, and, you know, they may have been given preference, but I think the fact that the experience of the women that are involved, like Cats with the reffing, and I have to agree with everything she said, how she refs. She described herself perfectly. She lets the flow of the game go. She doesn't call, she warn, like, you talk to the players, you warn them, you're like, listen, stop reaching, stop doing this. Very fair. But I think, and that's because you're female, I think. I don't think men are as tolerant as it. They'll just call it, they've cut to kind of put their stamp on it. Not all of them, but I think Ireland, Basketball Ireland in general is getting so much better for like the representation of females across the board, be it reffing and in coaching.
Yeah, definitely. And just lastly, before we move on to Jodie, I just want to talk a little bit about your international experience, particularly 3x3, because I know that's something that we're really pushing here in Ireland, you know, in our FIBA status at playing at that level. So I don't know if you just have any, just give us a little bit of your background with the 3x3 and, you know, the difference in terms of 3x3 and 5v5.
Yeah, I suppose with the 3x3, it kind of came back to fruition in 2014, and it was the first international team to go back playing in like kind of Europe in years. And like that, it's just infectious. And I suppose if you've done any of the 3-on-3 road shows or played in any of the games, like it's like 12-minute game, the half court, it's just the aggression, like it has everything in just a shorter period. I suppose as well for us, we were quite successful. When we went to Riga for the first one, we kind of qualified on points difference, and it was nearly a little bit by fluke, and ended up going to Romania for the Euro Cup Championship, and just kind of all skyrocketed from there, just qualifying for Baku. And I think I think after Baku we should have pushed on so much more and really drove on the 3v3, because it is like, if I had a choice between 3v3 and 5v5, I'd pick 3v3 any day. It's exhilarating, it's so much fun, it's energetic, and I think we as like internationally could be really successful at it.
Yeah, as particularly the women. I know the women, you know, probably over the men at the moment, like, you know, like have obviously got a better chance of pushing at the 3x3 level. So look, we have tried to run 3x3 like road shows and stuff, especially for the underage. And I know even like my sister, she loves 3x3. She'd say the same thing, that she picked 3x3 over 5v5. And anyway, she said it's so much fun. So it's definitely something to get involved in.
The only downfall is it's 4 players, you know. Yeah. But at the same time, it's fantastic. And if you look at any of the other European countries that are doing it, they actually have their national team and the separate 3v3 team then going to all different tournaments across Europe every summer.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Grainne. So Jodie, lastly, thanks for being so patient. So just give us a little bit of background on your career. I believe you're playing with Limerick Celtics wheelchair basketball team. You talked a little bit about, you know, still being in school. So just, you know, even just a bit about how you got started and how you balance kind of your academics and your basketball.
Yeah, I played able-bodied basketball before I became a paraplegic. And I started when I was 6, so I played with UL Huskies, and at that time they had a super team, so I was able to watch people like Grainne play above us, and it was great. It kind of gave you the encouragement to say, oh look, that could be you one day, and it kind of just pushed you a bit forward. So I suppose I've always loved basketball, and I played it until I was 13. I played it at all different levels, and I moved to Limerick Celtics when I was 13. And I played there for a few months before I became a paraplegic. And then I kind of had to stop for 2 years when I first became sick. And then I found wheelchair basketball again, because my cousin played wheelchair basketball for Ireland. So he kind of got me involved in it, and that's how I kind of started. And I just fell back in love with the game, because I wasn't too sure how I'd like it. It's very different, so I wasn't too sure how I'd like it, but I went out. And I just absolutely loved it. It was just great to have the ball back in my hands. So I continued playing that. And I think this is my 2nd season now playing. And I just fell back in love with it. And I play 4 times a week, or at least I try to. And it's kind of awkward balancing with school, but I've been getting homeschooled for the last 2 years. So it kind of works a little bit better. The fact that I have a little bit more free time during the day, and then I'm busy in the evenings, and then I have more free time at night, so I can kind of balance it with training sessions.
Yeah, very good. And just what do you think, you know, from your perspective, that could there be more done, or what could be done for people in sport, and more sport opportunities for people that are disabled, or that are, you know, like you talk about your journey from able-bodied basketball to wheelchair basketball, you know, and I understand how to, like, I did a wheelchair basketball coaching course a couple of weeks ago, and we had to play wheelchair basketball. It was my first time ever playing wheelchair basketball, and it's extremely difficult, and it's, it's totally different than, mainstream basketball. But just from your perspective, like just advice for people.
Yeah, it's not really just for people in wheelchairs. Like, as you said, if you have an injury, or even if you're an able-bodied player, like anyone can play it really. You can just sit in the chair and you can play it. And it's just, I think the key really is just junior clubs, because we've I think 9 senior clubs in the league, and we're starting to get more junior clubs. It's kind of great when you start when you're younger, because then you really get the feel for it, and you can just continue it playing the whole way up.
Yeah, and how do you find it being mixed? Like, because I know there's a lot of it's mixed, isn't it? Like, it's with males as well.
Yeah, it's actually fine. I've never obviously played with males before, playing able-bodied, so I was kind of confused at the start. I didn't really know how it worked, but everyone's nice, and the refs kind of encourage you as well. So they're starting to become more female athletes in the sport as well, coming up through the junior leagues. So hopefully in a few years' time it'll be a little bit more balanced as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that, Jodie. Just before we finish up, guys, I just want to ask each of you to describe, or tell me if you can, because I know there's probably lots of memories, but what your favorite basketball memory to date would be. So Jodie, if you want to kick us off.
I think it has to be one of probably my first matches playing wheelchair basketball. I had a few memories before then, but it was just the feeling of being back on the court again, and just finding the basketball court again and playing with teammates that I hadn't done in so long.
Cats?
Oh God, I have a few, but I guess
you can give us a couple.
with, huh?
You can give me a couple if you want.
Okay, so I suppose the MVP after my dad dying when Ellie was 9 months, that was great. For Leicester was the underdog, because UL were unbeaten in that season. So that was one crazy memory. Playing in the European police games that we hosted in Dublin with the Garda team. Isabella was born on the 25th of September, and I took part on the 23rd of October, so 28 days later. And we ended up beating France in the final, again, underdogs. The commissioner was at the game. Tony Burke refed the game, and got to play with my favourite people, which are Angelina, Mary Gardner, Michelle Fahey, and all the girls on the Garda team. So those two memories are especially important to me. Yeah.
Thanks. And Grainne?
I suppose Baku was such a big experience for me internationally when we went to the first European Games. It was like kind of a real insight into the life of a professional athlete for the 10 days we were over there. It was pretty amazing. It was like a mini Olympics. So that was phenomenal. And I suppose at club level, when the trainer role with Glanmire, I think was pretty special. It was unreal. Yeah, and I also, got to share it with a family member, which makes it a little bit sweeter.
Yeah. I think just everything that you've talked about there, and I hope if people do listen and tune in, and especially for that younger generation, the memories that you do make, like within the sport, you could probably pick so many, so many. And then I know even for myself, like there's some as a coach, some as a player, and it's just unbelievable to have that and to share it with family or friends, because it is such a small, like tight-knit community, like everybody really does back each other. So I definitely think that that's very encouraging for people to hear, that there's so many memories that you can have, like, that you bring forward into all aspects of your life. So I suppose that's really it. Like, thanks so much for joining us. The three of you have been unbelievable, and I think you could probably talk for ages more about all your different memories and experiences, and we could definitely learn so much from each other. But I just want to thank you all for taking the time. For the latest content in Women in Sport Week, I'd encourage everybody to check out the Basketball Ireland channel, so Ireland.basketball website, and our social channels. It is Women in Sport Week, so hopefully we'll be populating all of our channels with different content throughout the week.